So in this video I played Resident Evil 6 in 2023 for the first time. Like usual, I'll be giving an overall review and my thoughts on the game to let you know if it still holds up now, almost 11 years later. Now this is a series where I play through each game in the franchise, all for the first time, and RE5 was of course the last one, and I mentioned that it was the best selling Resident Evil game, and funny enough RE6 comes in at a close second, which is interesting as nowadays we hear a lot less talk about these two games, and to be honest a lot more hate. So this means that more people may be unsure whether or not they should check it out, so if you go on to enjoy or find this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story games then I have various reviews on the channel on an array of games if you'd like to check them out. Now let's jump into Resident Evil 6. Now one of the biggest complaints about the game before this, RE5, was that it strayed away from the survival horror style and focused way too much on action, so I already felt like this would sort of follow the same theme, therefore I didn't expect to go back when jumping into this game for the first time, and as I mentioned in my last review I had heard that RE5 was when the franchise started to lose track, until RE7 saved it all. But I still went in with hope and honestly just to see if I enjoy it more than 5, which before I mention anything, I did. Some people may agree with that, others not so much, but let's start by reviewing the story of RE6. Now, similar to RE2, you can choose between 4 whole campaigns in this game. Now, they aren't totally different and you don't have to play them all, because just like in my RE2 review, I only chose and played one in my playthrough, because they all follow the same time of events and use pretty much the exact same locations for all 4 of them. Yes, there are different areas you wouldn't explore with another, but it wasn't varied enough for me to play all 4 of them for this video. I think you can understand that, as well as the campaigns following different characters' perspectives, meaning that there were multiple times where a character would meet with another and you would play through the exact same moment again. And because of them not being varied, I think 4 was way too much for a standalone game. I would get it if it was a totally new side game or even a DLC, but I think 2, just like an RE2, is the right amount, and it seems this could have easily been compressed down to that, meaning I'm not hating on the fact that they mix the perspectives at times. I think that's really cool, and you see the characters meet up as they also survive through as a team, and if you do play the others you can see the progress of how they get there in different ways. But for the most part, just having these 4 campaigns alone takes down the pacing of the game a lot, because I do feel like the majority of players would be bored, or at least feel like it's going slow, when you have to run through all 4 of these campaigns, especially when you play through the same section twice, which should have just not been in there. Now I should mention what the 4 campaigns actually follow. First we have Leon and Helena, then Chris and Piers, then Jake and Sherry, and lastly Ada 1, by herself. To explain the different styles of them all, it's obvious that Leon's one is a lot more survival based, as in the gameplay style of RE4 for the most part, whereas Chris and Piers is heavily focused on action, similar to RE5, which I know some people will really like if they really enjoyed RE5's style, leaving for a lot more choice that tries to please everyone's playstyle, where RE5 really didn't. Jake and Sherry follows the mix of the two, but also involves a lot of scripted running away sort of moments, and Ada is the solo option that allows a very independent survival experience, but also means there's a lot of puzzles in that one and stealth. They're very prominent that once again some people will enjoy. So overall the decision of having 4 campaigns has benefits, but not the right execution at times. What I loved about this game, and probably one of the biggest reasons as to why I enjoyed this game more than 5, is that the AI is way less infuriating than Sheva in the last game. They are a lot more advanced and responsive, which made sense as it's 3 years after RE5. This also allows for you to not always have to defend the AI, pretty much as they literally never die. They do get grabbed every now and then, but they're actually smart enough to get out of it, and my AI didn't die once in my playthrough, as well as not having to manage your inventory and ammo thankfully. Because they're way less clunky and a lot more responsive, they don't always get in your way, and overall just so much better for the experience. Now if anyone doesn't know for whatever reason, Leon is the familiar face that returns for this campaign, and has of course been seen in previous RE games. Following off from 4, he's still working for the government as an agent, and is basically told to find out what's happening with the bioterrorist attack in China, more specifically the city of Tall Oaks in this campaign. Working with Helena, also a government agent and a brand new character, you progress through the city as partners and eventually investigate the conspiracy to do with this, yet another new strain of the virus, this being a new bioweapon that's incredibly powerful and deadly, meaning that you of course encounter many waves of zombies like usual, as well as puzzles not as complex as seen before, which to some people is a good thing and others may have liked to see more variation, especially as this campaign focuses on the survival aspect the most. But then there is also Ada's campaign for that, which is sort of a running theme in the game where you either have to push your way through the bloated story of 4 long campaigns, or you just play the one perspective, meaning you might miss out on more of certain aspects like puzzles such as Ada's, which involves it more combat and action like in Chris's for example. The character of Leon in this game still follows the same as 4, and doesn't go back to what he was like in 2 for example, which of course I didn't really see happening. He still maintains the really focused mindset and more calm personality, always keeping composure at all times, which makes sense because, as I've mentioned, he's always seen some stuff in his career. Now with this game's campaign mainly focusing on uncovering the truth of the attack, as well as stopping the spread. Now in terms of Helena, she isn't anything brand new and isn't overly special as a character. She does have a dark and sort of mysterious background, I guess you could say, similar to Ada but not as prominent, and it doesn't really change her personality or the way she sort of acts for the most part, but you do learn about her background and connection more, which is important. I won't say much more about it. Her connection with Leon is of course a big part of their campaign, as they're partners for all of it. She does in a way push Leon a lot, and it's clear he isn't really a fan of that, which makes sense because he's been doing this for years and he knows what he's doing. Now in terms of the gameplay, as I mentioned, Leon and Helena's campaign is way more focused on the survival horror and less action based. This isn't to say there isn't any action, it just starts off similar to RE2 for example, and it's like this for pretty much the whole of chapter 1. Some could say it goes on for way too long and gets a little bit repetitive, because unlike the variation of puzzles and backtracking we've seen before, it's more so just moving forward and stopping it a few times. But as I said, there is action when you venture out into the outside and bigger areas. You take on waves of enemies when eventually you get outside, and doesn't go on for too long like in the first chapter, and there's more variation in this combat with different enemy types which I'll mention, and more puzzles as you progress. The enemy types are a lot more horror based and more zombie like, if that makes sense, with a lot of variation of big and more rare types that I really liked in this game. And because the game does have so much action, the many different types actually make it a lot more engaging. Of course there's the standard type being the zombies, which have returned in this game. We've been used to Maginis and Ganados using their own melee weapons, and sometimes guns or crossbows, so it's nice to see this game sort of return back to that typical zombie character, which everyone loves. Even though this could mean they're too easy to take down, but you can always buff the difficulty, and even though it's one type, they still vary in attacking style, speed, appearance, etc. There's the Whopper, which is self-explanatory really, a giant strong zombie who eats up an awful lot of shots. In the graveyard there's a zombie variety you can find, very tall, slender looking, and sometimes uses spades for weapons, as well as some exploding. There's the Bloodshot, these are quite strong and tanky but can be quite easy to take down with weak spots. Zombie dogs are of course here like usual. The Shrieker is another giant type that actually stuns you with their scream, and then I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, but this one here is probably the scariest, because basically when you kill them they can reconnect their limbs, or if not their separate limbs will attack you, so it's insane. There's loads more as well that may only pop up once in the entire game, and only on one character's campaign, so I don't actually have many gameplay for it. And the world itself, mixed with the design of these enemies, it still looks incredible nowadays and holds up really well. I think if you showed someone that had never heard of Resident Evil, they'd think it released a few years back. I was quite surprised coming off RE5, which also looked great for the time, but the lighting and the detail in this game just really captures that atmosphere, and I loved it. Now this amount of action is another reason as to why this game is hated, but with this variety in enemy types as well as areas, I really enjoyed it. I also complained about the action in RE5, but at least with this game it feels like a horror for the most part, and I think people have to come to realise that if they stuck to the original formula of backtracking, sorting your items and puzzles, although that was great, it would easily become sort of repetitive with each game. They sort of do need to venture out a bit, and it makes sense with a massive virus going on, there is going to be action. In this game the execution could have just been better. All the elements are there, but the pacing overall is just wrong, with too many long sections or repeated sections, gameplay elements missing from certain campaigns. So even by trying to appeal to the wider audience by having this many campaigns to pick from, they still just didn't get it quite right, and as a game overall there are still downsides. I think one of the best ways to describe this would be that if you try to please everyone, you please no one, and it's pretty accurate to what Capcom did, so I think that's where I end my review of Resident Evil 6 in 2023, and after everything I mentioned, I must say that overall, you should check it out if you want to. Of course you won't miss out on an amazing experience if you don't. It wouldn't be the end of the world if you skipped over this, but I know that there's a good amount of people that would find this game good like me. The campaign of Leon stays true the most to the typical survival horror. Not to say it's perfect, there's still lots of action, and the overall pacing could be better, but out of all the campaigns to choose from, there will definitely be one that suits you the best and you'll have a decent playthrough. I just think as a game overall, there's room for improvement. But hey, I still prefer it to RE5 in my opinion. Comment down below which one you prefer, and if you enjoyed this review, then let me know know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy story games, then that's what this channel is all about, with various reviews on the channel on a bunch of games, with a playlist of a series in the description. Now this does mean that Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is up next, and apparently that's where they quote unquote saved the franchise, so I'm excited for that. Thank you for watching until the very end, and bye bye.